So finally we've been given a few new weapons to play around with in Star Wars Battlefront 2. I figured I might as well make a bit of a video on them all and let you know what they are and how they're going to perform in the game. There were quite a few new things that came along in the Age of Rebellion update, which was released on all platforms on 26th of February. 2 new reinforcements, letting you play as a little murderous Ewok, along with the Imperial ISB agent, with dual pistols. And there's also been a bunch of new locations added to the game's co-op mode too. But along with all of that stuff, 4 new weapons have been added to the game, basically a new gun for every one of the main classes. So this video is going to be briefly running over them and giving my overall opinions. I've decided to showcase the new weapons by playing on some of those new co-op locations, also added in the update. So if you're wondering why some of the enemies I'm playing against are a bit rubbish, well, there you go. As you've probably noticed by now, I'm also playing in first person, which isn't something I'd normally like to do, but for the purpose of this video, at least it lets you see the gun models a bit better, showing them off properly in action. I should probably also mention that all of the new weapons are unlocked by simply racking up kills in co-op with the 4 different classes, and after accumulating 50 kills with a specific class, you'll get the gun for that class. Pretty simple. And if you want to unlock the 3 individual modifications for each gun, then all you've got to do is keep getting kills with them, which can also be done in the co-op mode, as well as competitive multiplayer. Anyway, let's take a look at what's been added. The first weapon, which you've been watching so far in the background footage, is the E11D. Manufactured for precision and reliability, the E11D was the primary blaster of Imperial Death Troopers. Sounds and looks pretty cool. And this is the only new gun that got added in the update that wasn't actually featured in the 2015 Star Wars Battlefront game. It's a fairly typical kind of rifle for the assault class. It fires in full auto, has a pretty normal sort of overheating rate, though because it's got that magazine sticking out from the left side, it looks a little bit like a high-tech version of a World War II SMG. It feels very fun to use, and another very effective choice for the assault class. I know the assault already has access to some really deadly weapons overall, especially for aggressive play in close quarter gunfights, and this still feels like a viable option in comparison to the others. With all that said, it's not exactly the most effective thing in the world against targets in the distance, because I did notice that it often took an extra shot or 2 to bring someone down wandering around beyond mid-range. Some of the other assault weapons can retain a slightly higher damage over distance, but it generally feels like a pretty well balanced, good all-rounded weapon. Its rate of fire is not exactly very fast, and it does jump around a little bit with sustained fire, so you might have to tap the trigger a bit to control your shots more than other guns, but within close to mid-ranges it does feel dangerous and fun to use. Definitely recommend unlocking and giving it a blast. The first modification the E11D's got access to is the Reduced Recoil mod, which does exactly what you'd expect it to, and you can get this by getting 25 kills with it. Because the gun does have a bit of a chunky recoil pattern when you hold down the trigger, this mod is definitely going to help you out, probably making it feel a bit easier to use beyond close range where it's more likely to lose accuracy quicker. But I'd probably suggest equipping this one, especially if you have trouble staying on target, as it's going to make the weapon feel a bit easier to use. The second mod for the E11D is a flashlight, unlocked after netting yourself 75 kills with it. Good for lighting up dark areas to reveal your enemies when aiming, which might come in handy in some cases. Though as far as I'm aware, it's not going to alter any of the gun's stats directly, so it's a bit more of a visual improvement to help with target acquisition. Last but by no means least is the improved range mod, letting the gun deal a bit more power over longer distance. This feels like a good choice to use, making it a bit more effective against opponents further away. And combined with the reduced recoil mod, these two really help to make the E11D perform better over medium distances, generally making it a very nice gun overall. Anyway, moving on to the next weapon in the update, probably my favourite gun from the 2015 Star Wars Battlefront, the T-21 blaster rifle for the heavy class. This is basically the gun that puts most of its eggs in one basket, prioritising power over everything else. But just like the first time around, I actually find the T-21 to be one of the most effective weapons in the game, providing you can land your shots. It's a robust heavy blaster manufactured for continuously discharging powerful shots, at the expense of a low rate of fire. Exactly how I remembered it from the first game. The T-21 feels brutal over pretty much all ranges because of that higher damage per shot. Its range is also really good too, being able to take enemies down reliably further away in less hits than normal. And despite firing deadlier shots, the recoil doesn't really feel all that bad. So this also helps it to perform well over all distances too. Compared to the other heavy weapons in the game, I also find the gun seems to cool down at a quicker rate than average too. It takes ages for some of the other rapid firing blasters to cool down after getting overheated, but the T21 doesn't, only seeming to take a couple of seconds before you can get back into the action. So this is good for offensive players who like to fight a bit closer to the enemy, as you're less likely to get caught out by the gun's overheating cycles. Though because it does have a slow fire rate, I guess this can make it a bit more of a risk-reward gun. After getting 25 kills with the T21, you'll unlock the improved zoom modification, which gives it a scope with increased magnification. So this is going to help to make it feel more accurate to use over mid to long ranges, with it being easier to line up your shots correctly and lead your target's movements. And with the T21 being pretty effective against enemies further away, I find that this is a good choice to complement the weapon's range. The second mod, unlocked after getting 75 kills, is the improved handling mod, physically altering the gun's barrel, thus lowering the recoil and bolt dispersion, at the expense of reducing the damage as a trade-off. This will probably make it feel easier to use in most gunfights, but probably means that enemies won't go down quite as quickly all the time, possibly taking extra shots to kill. I found that said extra shots were a bit easier to land with this modification applied, but the raw power reduction might put some people off, as it definitely feels a bit deadlier without this mod. The last modification, unlocked at 150 kills, is the burst mode mod, changing the gun to a free blast burst with every pull of the trigger. This is probably going to go quite well with the improved handling mod, as you'll be able to account for that slightly lower damage with the free blast burst, plus it'll be easier to land those shots due to the gun's improved recoil and bolt dispersion, so although it makes the gun feel a bit different to its base version, it'll probably make it more effective over closer to mid ranges with those two mods applied. The third gun in the update is another one returning from the 2015 Star Wars Battlefront, the DL-18 for the officer class, a popular blaster from the Outer Rim. While slightly less powerful than its heavier counterparts, it makes up for that with a faster rate of fire. This also feels pretty similar to the one in the last game, having that low damage but high fire rate. And on the base of it, the DL-18 is a similar kind of weapon to the SE-44C, but firing in semi-auto straight out of the gate. Gonna be honest, not my favourite weapon in the update, or in the officer class as a whole, but still a decent choice if you prefer higher fire rates and more controllable recoil patterns, as it's a pretty good one for chipping away at your opponent's health bar and finishing off already weakened enemies quite reliably. The first modification you'll unlock by getting 25 kills with the DL-18 is the improved cooling mod, which kinda does what it says on the tin. It puts an attachment on the end of the barrel, which you can actually see in the in-game model, and this lets you fire more shots out before the gun starts to overheat. Because it generally takes more shots to kill, this can be quite handy, going well with the fact that the DL-18 has a fairly nippy rate of fire. The second modification, unlocked after 75 kills, is the reduced spread mod, lowering the weapon spread, thus making it a bit more accurate with sustained fire, which is pretty good in the DL-18's case, with it having a faster fire rate than average, often leading to more spread. This can also go quite well with the third modification though after 150 kills, which happens to be the repeating mode mod, enabling the gun to continuously fire by keeping the trigger pulled, basically making it fully automatic. This will be a good option for most players, as it'll let you fire at the gun's maximum rate without having to frantically tap the trigger, making it feel a bit easier to use. And because it does have that rapid fire rate, it'll often let you get more shots down range in less time, sometimes equating to quicker kill times, especially if you've got a slow trigger finger. The last weapon in the pack that got added in the update is probably the most interesting one, because it's not a typical blaster that fires bolts. The Specialist class now has access to the Cycler Rifle, a versatile, durable weapon popular amongst Tusken Raiders native to Tatooine. Now this is probably the most anticipated weapon of the lot, because everyone remembered how bloody deadly this thing was back in the last Star Wars Battlefront. So deadly it was actually a star card. I can safely say that the Cycler Rifle is nowhere near as brutal as it used to be, and in my honest opinion, it's probably the least impressive weapon in the update. It's got a fast fire rate, but it's also got tons of recoil, meaning it's a bit hard to take advantage of that fast fire rate. Plus the gun also overheats very quickly after a few shots, so a lot of the time the gun's going to have to run through its cooldown midway through a gunfight with another player. The damage is quite high, but it didn't seem particularly very special compared to the other longer range rifles, as it still struggles to kill players sometimes, and doesn't seem to deal very much headshot damage either, despite being a pretty tricky gun to use. Unlike in the past game, the Cycler Rifle doesn't even penetrate shields, and overall, although it looks and sounds really cool, it's not really a fantastic addition, going up against some of the other Specialist rifles, which generally seem to be a bit more effective and consistent. With all that said, the gun can be improved with mods, and after netting 25 kills, you'll unlock the dual zoom modification, letting you toggle between 2 magnification levels. This will help you to acquire targets over different ranges, and should help to make it feel more adaptable to specific situations, which is always useful for when your target is over a medium or long distance. The next modification is Reduced Recoil. Definitely a useful one in this case, as it'll let you utilise the gun's decent fire rates and allow you to land successive shots easier and quicker. A modification I'd highly recommend, especially with the cycler rifle bouncing all over the place after every pull of the trigger. The last mod, unlocked at 150 kills, is the Improved Cooling mod, reducing the time before the gun starts to cool down. And because the cycler rifle overheats quite a lot, this is also an upgrade I'd recommend, to improve the gun's functionality. So there it is folks, the 4 new weapons quickly summarised in Star Wars Battlefront 2's Age of Rebellion update. Hope you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up if you did, and subscribe and apply notifications to be the first to see new content coming up on my channel soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you in that next episode.